It was a TikTok.
Was it a TikTok?
Yep.
What was her name again? Sabona? All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 7 of the Former Athletes Podcast. I'm here with the boys. I'm your host, Cam Graham. What up, everybody? Thanks for listening in. To the right, we got Jordan Durner. What up, Durner?
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing?
Down bottom, we got the man, Nick Wall. What up, Nick?
What's up, fellas?
And down next to Nick, we got the man, Jonathan Sapp. What up, Jonathan?
Ooh.
Oh, he brought a little bit of energy on that one.
Consistent.
Do the people of YouTube like the ooh that Jonathan get? Hey, make sure you leave a comment below and let us know what you think. Actually, just go ahead and leave a comment on all of them. See what everybody's reaction is.
Comment now and let us know if you think you're going to enjoy this or not. Yeah. Comment again and let us know if it was accurate.
People might watch this shit and be like, dude, these guys are garbage straight from the intro.
They just comment and leave. They already know.
They're like, man, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Anyway, we're going to tell you what the fuck we're talking about. What we're talking about today is I want to give a shout out to my girl, Sedona Price, the 6'7" Oregon forward who came out on TikTok and basically stood up for women all across the country, women's equality. She put out on TikTok a video of the men's March Madness weight room, which are all in the same spot, by the way. They're all in the bubble in Indianapolis together, I believe. And basically it was side by side. Hey, here's the men's gym, and here's what they're calling the women's gym, which is actually just a rack of dumbbells. And she put the NCAA on blast, said they don't care about women, which she should have said. And I'm glad she stood up for them, but let's see what the boys think. Durner, what's good, baby?
I think it's pretty crazy. I mean, they're both playing in the biggest tournament of their lives, and to go into like where you're staying at and think, oh, okay, you know what, I'm gonna have to think one thing and to actually get absolutely nothing, pretty much, is kind of bullshit to me. I mean, imagine being a top tier athlete, right, and going in and thinking that you're going to get a full gym and everything, and you walk in and you get one rack of free weights and a couple of yoga mats.
Yeah, I'd put them on blast just like she did. I'd put them on blast.
A rack to share amongst the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, a team of what, like, I don't know,
probably 12 to 15.
16. Yeah. So, it's messed up, I believe, and I'm glad she put them on blast on TikTok, and now the NCAA is obviously apologizing and everything. It's been immediately turned around, but, it shouldn't have never had to go to the full extent that it did.
Yeah, I think it's a complete slap in the face, right? Like, imagine this scenario. Imagine you are the best women's team in the nation, best women's basketball team in the nation. You show up to March Madness, the event that makes millions of dollars for everybody except the athletes, right? And you show up and it's your job to just entertain people, right? Like, go play some basketball, make us some money, right? You see the men's team, they got the full weight room, all the racks, got everything, right? And it's literally one rack for them, shared amongst everyone. And even when they complained, like, I don't know if you guys saw the pictures of it, it still is pretty trash. Like there are apartments that I've lived in with better weight rooms than what they got. A professional athletic basketball team, like why is my rinky-dink gym in my apartment have more weights than them? I don't get it.
I think it's all valid points, and I'd like to just toss this in here. If they're all in this bubble area, which means essentially they're all on lockdown and they've all been tested, I don't understand why they couldn't have shared the gym. Maybe we could have added that one rack of weights to the other gym, and there could have just been separate times where, hey, the men can use the gym now, the women can use the gym later. I'm sure it's probably got to be sectioned off by certain teams at a time anyway.
Right.
So it's not like if a free-for-all at the gym. I mean, that would make it more tragic that there's literally like 8 sets of weights. There's like 64 teams in there all trying to work out at once, like sharing a single dumbbell. But I do want to actually ask a question to the guys real quick. How many women's basketball games have you guys watched this year?
Oh yeah, big, all of them.
Oh.
All of them?
Oh yeah.
I'm calling Cap. And I'm going to take the NCAA side real quick. I might be the asshole for it, but there's two sides to every story. Here's the thing. There's channels coming out of the woodworks to play March Madness games for the men. Everybody want to get a channel, or every channel wants to get a game on so they can get that ad revenue. And the NCAA is a business. I do agree that it's a little incorrect in how they do it, right? Like the way that they spend their money and spread their money. Clearly, players, well before this, have an opportunity to gain and share in some of that revenue that's been generated. That being said, I'm not saying it's right, but the NCAA is getting, well, yeah, that's true, under the table, but is definitely getting a lot more payout from these men's games than the women's games, which is why I think initially the men's had a much bigger gym facility. The budget to go towards that men's thing, right or wrong, is a lot larger than the women's. I think everybody's sentiment thus far has been really nice, but realistically, I think that's why it is. And I'm, you know, I'm prepared for the backlash, but I'm just trying to be honest here.
But like I think what you said before, though, right? They're in a bubble, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So were you saying like that both men's and women's basketball teams are in a bubble?
I mean, I thought that's what we had spoken about earlier, and I could be incorrect, but I'm saying if they are in the same spot, if they are in the same bubble, I think that would have been the more like redeemable thing, would be to say, this is the gym for this Indianapolis center that everybody is welcome to use. You just make one gym. But the fact that they separated in the first place, that's where they went wrong. My side point to this is if they are going to separate, I can understand why. And it's not just the gym. If you guys saw everything, like the swag pack was like far like inferior for the women. Like the women literally got like a bottle and a bar of soap, and they're like, "Congrats on making it to the tournament." Meanwhile, the men have like too much stuff to like fit in a duffel bag. So,
same thing with their lunches, like their meals. Their meals,
I mean,
the men's were getting like Blue Apron type meals, and then basically the females were getting like Lunchables.
Okay.
They literally have like it.
I would prefer the Lunchable.
Hey, you know what I mean? Don't hate on a good Lunchable.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And the disparity, you guys understand the word I'm trying to say, I hope, is very large and very noticeable, which is why it got called out. And I do think that, you know, it should. But I think that we would be lying to ourselves. And, you know, I want to be honest. I know that I'm touching a touchy subject right now. But the men are generating more money. Like, men's basketball is really popular. The women's is not. I'm not saying that the women can't be talented or that the women don't have the rights to have everything, you know, equal to the men. But I believe, my assumption is that that's what the root of how all this stuff stemmed from.
And I would assume you're correct, you know, but as a counter argument, does the worst team on the men's side get treated better or worse than the best team on the men's side?
That's probably the best counter argument that you could make.
They get treated equally, right? So the 16th seed still has a gym. It's the same gym that the 1 seed's using, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is just because some people do better at entertaining or providing money to the business than others doesn't mean you treat them any different. So the 16th seed isn't gonna, you know, there's a chance they may score 20 points and like they get like just swept, right? And it's like, okay, like, you know, thanks for trying, like leave now, right? But they still got the same treatment as that 1 seed, right? So I think if you're gonna, you know, now to take that and to make it a men's versus a women's argument, they're both playing for the same organization. They're both playing underneath the NCAA. So you can't have one getting treated differently than the other when both of them are primarily there to perform the same function, right?
You shouldn't, but clearly you can because we just saw it happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
We just saw it, and with a large disparity between the two of them. And I mean, I guess my argument there, and once again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and everything here, but with the you know, the worst team, the play-in games, or the 16 seeds, I can name a couple of those 16 seeds for the men. I can't necessarily name them for the women's. I don't know if I could name you a women's 1 seed. So the fact that it's men versus women, I think maybe people harp on that stuff too much. And you said it was the same thing. Yeah, I guess it's all college basketball. It's all under the NCAA, but it is a separate tournament. and it does have a different pool to it. Like, a lot of people fill out men's March Madness brackets, and once again, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but people don't. That's not a tradition thing that people do for the women's. It's not like we really ever hear about that. So the point that I'm trying to get at and ruffle some feathers along the way is just that it's like the amount of attention drawn, it is different. So like the I don't know, the payout, quote unquote, is different. But Jonathan, I think you probably made like the best counter argument is that, yeah, like there's a lot of 16 seeds from irrelevant conferences, which are probably getting treated nicer at the NCAA tournament than they would at their own school, versus there's some power conference women's teams that are getting a fraction of what they get had they, been able to play at home. And the first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament are played at home, yes, no, and then they don't move until like the Sweet 16, or it's the four regions.
Yeah, they're put into regions. So, and then each region plays in a specific area in a region, like
yeah, South, and then they move at the end to like one final destination, right?
Yeah, usually the final four, I think, is at one destination. Which also, speaking of that, this is off subject, but a little bit on subject. Have you the final four is in Indianapolis this year, and they brought back one of my favorite commercials ever. Shout out Charles Barkley. He drives Samuel L. Jackson and Spike Lee to Annapolis, Maryland. And he was like, yeah, here we are in the Annapolis. And they're like, no, it's Indianapolis.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, in the Annapolis.
Interesting.
But anyway, that's close by to where we're at. So I had to give a shout out to Annapolis. And that is a hilarious commercial.
Yeah, shout out Annapolis. I've never seen it. I hope I can catch it on one of the intermissions.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. With that being said, though, I will not stand for the sexism comments that Nick is making down bottom. This podcast will not stand for it. And we stand on the side of Sedona Prince, which I think I butchered her name earlier, and Durner called me out in the group chat instead of on the podcast, which would have made for better content. But Sedona Prince, my apologies. Oregon forward, I got your back.
I think it was a good thing to do, but I am willing to poke some fun at it.
Also, one last thing, and then I'll leave it up to you guys. The NCAA, I think we can agree that, like, it's kind of crazy how these players are not getting paid a single dime out of all this, and just recently were they, like, trying to get, like, the rights to themselves, right? This organization is making so much money, but they're not going to buy weights. It's like, come on. Obviously, I get the men are making more money, as a business perspective, from the business perspective as the women are. But like, what is a couple $100 or $1,000 to an organization that is already making billions? Like this year, they're probably gonna make billions. Everyone's so bored because the pandemic. Everyone's sitting at home. They're just gonna watch March Madness. They're gonna make bets. This probably just made them even more rich, and they can't even afford. They're only going to put $1,000 towards weights. It's like, come on.
Nah, dude. The NCAA is a non-profit. I trust the NCAA.
I'm sure the FBI does too.
NCAA has never done anything bad to me for me not to trust them. Except, speaking of shit NCAA stuff, Stanford wrestler Shane Griffith goes on, sophomore, and wins the wrestling. Do they call it national championship? Is it a wrestling national championship?
I think so.
National championship.
Yeah, so he goes on after Stanford says their lack of money that they had and had to defund the wrestling program. My guy wears his black singlet.
Yeah.
Goes on to the mat and dominates in the national championship anyway. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have been a part of that situation. I personally haven't been a part of that situation, but I had friends at one time that played baseball at Towson, and while they were there, there was a word going around that they were defunding the baseball program there, and they did basically the same thing. They put black tape over their jerseys for a game that they played. And I don't even know if Towson has a baseball program to this day. Like, I don't know
if they still do. I think it got turned around. Yeah.
But I had friends going there at the time, and they kind of did the same thing. So I'm curious, like, what everybody's perspective on. First off, like, personally, though, like Jonathan was saying earlier, and like everybody else knows, like there's so much money in the NCAA, and there's so much money at Stanford University specifically. Like, I mean, I'm not their bookkeeper, so I'm not their financial guy specifically, but I could imagine that football program brings in enough to support all of the sports programs in Stanford athletics. So how the fuck does their wrestling program get defunded? Can somebody explain that to me?
It does seem really odd for a literal like powerhouse school. Think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody, at least in the States, that doesn't or isn't at least aware of Stanford and the fact that it is a university. Like, not only are they good in sports, but they're also one of the most like prestigious for academia type shit. Yeah, so it is a little bit odd. I don't know how it gets defunded, especially like you mentioned the football team. I'm sure they generate racks, but I guess I'll toss that part over to somebody else. But I think what's interesting is the timing of it all too. Like you mentioned the Towson thing right in the middle of the season. If for some reason they can't carry on with the program, dead in the middle of it right before like the playoffs, like you literally let them finish, I guess what's considered the regular season in wrestling, and they're like, all right, well, this is it. You guys go ahead. That seems like a little odd to me, but the fact that this man went on and won a national championship, I think kudos to him, because he literally said it doesn't matter. Essentially, if I have the backing of the school that probably recruited him to be there, that he's been wearing and representing for a year and a half, we'll say, 2 years since it's kind of at the end of his sophomore year, but I'm just going to go on and persevere. Like, I think that's the coolest thing. I don't think that we'd be talking about this young man had the school not canceled the program, but he's...
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what I would want to think about is, did that give him that extra edge to win the championship? Having that like, oh, the school doesn't even believe in, me or this program anymore. Like, I'm going to go show them. Or do you think he would have dominated regardless? Like, that's what I'd be thinking about.
I also wonder, like, I don't know if anybody knows, but how does that affect like him transferring to a school to be able to wrestle at a different school? Because I know in basketball and football, like if you choose, actually I don't know this for a fact, but I think if you choose to switch schools, then you have to sit a year and you lose a year of eligibility. And I remember when some of my buddies were like going to Towson, and I feel like there was like rumblings of like if they transferred, they would still lose that year of eligibility, even though their school had defunded the program. So I'm wondering how it works for wrestling, and I'm also wondering if maybe that motivated him as like a tryout for another school, if he was going there to say like, hey, I'm going to transfer to UCLA after the season's over, and if I go there a national championship, like you might as well just count me as your best wrestler right off the jump.
Yeah, I just whipped everybody's ass, so you want me.
I know it definitely would have lit a fire underneath me if basically the backing of the school was like gone, right? Because like you said, like you've been repping the school, you've been putting in that work every day, right? It's for you, but also like you're wearing it to represent the school and to be a part of something much greater than yourself. And so for them to basically say, we didn't prioritize you, like, sorry, see ya, it's like that would make me so mad. Especially if he had the talent to clearly win it all, right? Like, why would you not prioritize that? Like, basically, like, you knew that I imagine there was somebody there who said, wow, like, you're pretty good, but we're not going to continue, right? Like, that's what blows my mind, right? You probably knew he was decent, at least decent enough to go on to like win a couple of the rounds, right? So why would you knowingly say, you know what, like you're good, but sorry, I just can't. We're just gonna let you go. It's like that doesn't make sense to me.
I'm not a huge fan of Stanford in general, but I can't think of a time in any sport that they've won the national championship. Like maybe did they win in football when Andrew Luck was there?
Nah.
Okay, so I don't know when Stanford wins national championships.
I think they might have won women's basketball, actually.
Oh, they actually did recently, I think. Wow.
Yeah.
Loop around.
Yeah.
So, okay, but even if that, so say that's one in the last 20 years, I don't think that'd be unusual. There's plenty of schools that never win a national championship, anything. To have a national champion that would have been from your school, where your school could have said, like, we just won a national championship in whatever it is, and to drop that program, I hope the school takes no credit for that. I hope the school isn't like, well, you know what I mean? You were at Stanford.
Oh,
Cam, what were you gonna say?
well, I was gonna say if you were the wrestler though, and Stanford comes back, I don't know if they do it for wrestling, but like hang your name in the rafters, like oh yeah, wrestling national championship. If I was a wrestler, I'd be like, take that shit down. Like I wrestled, I did not wrestle for your school, I wrestled for myself. You know,
Now, I'd let them hang the banner, but I would just keep the trophy in my house.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't put it in the school trophy case. I'd be like, that's just mine.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know if it. So they didn't just like recently cut the 11 sports. It happened last summer.
Oh wow.
Really?
Which was it's mind blowing, right? But they allowed them to go on and do their last season, and like not taking any of the glory from this guy, but like the other sports that were cut were like men's and women's fencing, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, and like swimming. Like these aren't just like college like athletes as well. They're also like Olympic hopefuls who are like prepping for the Olympics, and they just kind of like snip. Like
okay,
you don't.
Yeah, I'm going to be super ignorant in this statement, but like, how much funding does it really require for you to have like a swimming team or a rowing team, right? Like, if you're going to be on the swimming team, you probably already have the pool. Just go 2 laps in it and then go drive to your tournaments. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, when I played like at FSU, like for Ultimate Frisbee, like we didn't have like funding like that, so we drove to our tournaments, right? Like we went, from Florida, we went to Louisiana for like a Mardi Gras tournament, right? We drove ourselves there. Like, how much money does it really cost to do something like swimming? I get like rowing would require like equipment and stuff like that, but I mean, it like just, I can't imagine it's all that much.
Right.
And then for them still to cut it, it's like, why?
Yeah. But like, I guess my take on it is, as an athlete and kind of if I was in his shoes, I don't know if they cut it last summer. Granted, he was also a redshirt sophomore, so he still has a couple of years of eligibility. But like, if I was junior or senior, I'd probably scrap. I'd probably file for it to be a red shirt and not go through with.
Yeah, but I guess it would depend on what the like transfer thing is, because if you're a sophomore and it's like I can either wrestle here and then lose it, either wrestle here or transfer and lose a year of eligibility. Like if it was me, I'd probably rather wrestle for Stanford for another year, just so I'm able to wrestle for my entire 4 years rather than like, oh, let me stick it to Stanford, but then I lose a year of being able to wrestle. And who knows, like, if this guy is a beast, but who knows if some of those people will ever wrestle again after college, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right, and that's another thing to take into consideration. Like, he's, like, when you go, like, if you're a wrestler, right, you're not, like, going to, there's no, like, professional wrestling league, you know what I mean, in the United States.
That's right. That's right, baby.
You know what I mean?
Don't leave out the AEW though. I don't know shit about wrestling, but my cousin is in the AEW. Actually, I have a cousin that's like part of it, or is like going to school for it. So, nice. Yeah. Well, shout out Weston.
Oh, shout out to Weston.
Shout out Weston.
But like, like these the dudes aren't going. And females as well. They're not going to college to wrestle collegiately to look to go pro, right? Like, specifically this individual, he's at Stanford, which is a prestigious institute. He's obviously got some smarts, right? So he literally is a die-hard, like, he's giving it all his heart, soul, like, his life is wrestling, you know what I mean? So I think it's a huge slap in the face, and I don't know how I would take it. I guess going with what Cam said, depending on the scenario, whether I could scrap or I could apply for
like
become a red shirt. Right. But I think if you I think there's obviously, Nick, you might be able to help out. I don't know if what the red shirt.
So you can only redshirt 1 year, but Cam, to your question and point earlier, there are ways to transfer without losing a year. I think like your previous school and maybe even the conference has to sign off on it. As I'm thinking about this, or like when I was thinking about it when you guys were talking about it, it seems really petty, but it makes sense where schools don't want to have invested in a player and then be like, nah, never mind, and then just go play somewhere and compete against them. I think that's why they use that year of eligibility. Like you can lose that because it's like, hey, you've committed to this school and we don't want you to just go swapping all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But I do think that schools can kind of like waive that year so you don't necessarily lose it. And in a situation like Stanford or, with the Towson thing that we talked about, I would assume that they would say, hey, yeah, program's over, so you can go wherever you'd like and you don't necessarily lose that. But to Derner's point, if you hadn't already used a redshirt year and you wanted to redshirt to get, reacclimated to a program, it all depends too. Imagine with wrestling, you just want to be the best in your weight class. And if there's already somebody there that's wrestling at 145, that's, say it's in reverse and the school that you wanted to go to had the national championship at whatever, or national champion at whatever weight. You might want to say, I don't want to be the backup for 2 years. Let me redshirt so I can, be the backup for 1 year and then I'll be the man for that last year, something like that. But then another thing to take in consideration as far as the transferring and everything goes is, somebody's situation, they might be going to school and they might have picked Stanford in this instance because it's close to home where they can still go home and care for a family member or something like that. I think that's kind of like the angle that I would think about is if you pick this school because it's like, hey, this gives me an opportunity to pursue a sport that I love, get an education that I know is quality, and I can be close to home for whatever the reason may be, and then that program stops, now you're kind of between a rock and a hard place where I got to decide, do I want to follow, the sports stream? And I think Derner might have said it, like, a lot of people that wrestle collegiately, there isn't like a NBA of wrestling that they're going to be going towards after, where you kind of know, hey, I got 4 more years of this and then it's it, unless you do, I guess, kind of like take a tangent into like WWE. Or do I want to say, okay, I'll stop it after 2 and that way I can still be around to help my family. So they definitely put the people in a tough spot. And to Jonathan's point, like, yeah, if you've already got a pool, why can't they keep swimming?
Let me ask this one question. Now that he's won, do you think they'll try to do something to bring it back, or do you think they're still going to leave it cut?
I think they're probably
why
going
they cut it in the first place.
I feel like when they win, they like get like money and shit.
He gets money. The school doesn't get money.
You get money. Yeah, but like
Imagine. Well, he can't wrestle for school anymore then anyway. He got cashed out, bro. He's a pro now.
That's true. He's ineligible.
I don't think they'll bring it back, unfortunately. But kudos to him because they cut it last year, and he was like, "Fuck it, you know what? I'm gonna go show out and attempt to get a national championship." And
he did it.
He fucking did it, man. It shows the character of that the kid as well. Like, it's never say die attitude, and I always respect that for sure.
Yeah.
Shane Griffith, you the fucking man, dude.
Yeah.
With that being said, that was episode 7, Former Athletes Podcast. Make sure you check us out next week, Wednesday, 6 p.m., sometime in the evening. We'll catch y'all then. Peace.
Thanks for watching, Former Athletes. Like, subscribe, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next week.